Closed captioning for Justice and Law Weekly is provided in part by the Clifford Law Offices in support of quality public television for the Chicago area.
Hello, I'm Bob Clifford, President of the Chicago Bar Association. Welcome to another edition of Justice and Law Weekly. My guest today is Brendan Reilly, Alderman for Chicago's 42nd Ward, my ward. Welcome, Alderman Reilly.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a privilege to be with you, and on behalf of the Chicago Bar Association, thank you so much for being here. I'll start out by saying that you've got a lot of challenges on your plate. I think every alderman in this city, the mayor, what the heck are we going to do with a $600+ million deficit?
Yeah, $635 million. Nothing attractive or easy.
Yeah.
We've run out of good options. We've been carrying a structural deficit in the city of Chicago for the last 10 years. That's not a well-known fact. And now we've run out of short-term reserves and long-term reserves to raid. So we have to make structural changes, and that's going to be difficult. If we do our job right, I think people will not recognize city government 3 or 4 years from now. We need to address every corner of government and change the way we do business.
Yeah. Well, let's back up a little bit, and we'll get into some of the. I started out with a tougher question than I actually wanted to. Could you acquaint the viewers with how you spend your day, what it is, what does an alderman do? I mean, is it a part-time gig? Are you there for a couple hours? Are you there for 20 hours? I mean, frankly, I think in your instance, from what I know, it's a lot of time.
It is. Well, and I represent the Central Business District, so for folks who aren't familiar with the ward numbers, it's generally downtown Chicago. If there are skyscrapers there, I'm probably representing you on the city council.
Right.
So we're home to about 100,000 people downtown. We're the most populous ward in the city of Chicago. And home to thousands upon thousands of small, medium, and large-sized businesses. And so mine is a full-time job. Not every ward has the same demands, but we're working nearly round the clock.
Yeah. And I know one of the things you did that I am grateful for is that you've opened up not only a local office where I could literally walk in and say hello and talk about my problems, but you visit your constituency quite a bit.
We do.
Tell us about that.
Yeah, we have a regular road show every week, and it's typical that 3 or 4 nights each week I'm with a different homeowners association downtown. When I ran for alderman in 2007 as a virtual unknown, I promised my future constituents that I would be accessible and I would not be hard to find. And so I'm living by that. We visit with condo associations every night. It's usually a 30-minute presentation from me, macro level policy and literally potholes. Right. And then it's question and answer, open mic, unscripted. Let me have it for 30 minutes. And that's usually where I get my to-do list. I walk away from these meetings better understanding where my constituents are at and what their priorities are for the neighborhood. So it's probably one of the most important things that I do.
Yeah. You know, speaking of potholes, and I always kind of smile because when I see you, I say, hey, my potholes. But on a serious note, whether it's Chicago or some other big cities, we've got a big infrastructure issue in terms of our infrastructure getting old and wearing out.
Absolutely.
What are the challenges presented there, do you think, for the city?
We have the greatest concentration of city infrastructure in the 42nd Ward. We're the receiving end of nearly everyone's daily commute. And it's aging. If you look at our sewer systems especially, many of our sewer mains are close to 100 years old. And as you know, it's better to do preventive maintenance and switch out that old infrastructure before it breaks, because it costs a lot more money putting crews out there at 3 in the morning making double time to fix a problem we could have gotten ahead of. And so making those forward-looking investments in infrastructure isn't just good for our infrastructure, it actually helps us contain our budget costs.
Right. What kind of planning, though? I would think, you know, like you mentioned condo associations, and I know that if you're having served on a condo board, that you have to have a part of your budget that's devoted to reserves so that you can timely fix up the infrastructure things around a condo building. Does the city do that same thing where in our budget we put aside reserves for those potholes, for those water mains, that there's a system in place?
We do have a capital fund, and that's done mostly through bonding.
Right.
And historically, the city's also tapped into tax increment finance dollars to help support infrastructure. I think Mayor Emanuel and his TIF task force is probably going to change that equation. So yes, there are dollars year over year the city can go and tap for infrastructure. But what we're finding is that as the feds are tightening their belt and the state of Illinois is having its own funding challenges, the city's getting less support from the federal and state governments for infrastructure. And that's the bulk of the money that we use. And so it's really important that we go and get our share of federal dollars out of Washington, and we need to help our governor come up with a new capital funding plan that's going to appropriate the tens of millions of dollars that we need to get these things done.
Right. You know, I know you mentioned when you go to these meetings, you know, you say, folks, let me have it. I have to tell you, I cringe about that a little bit because, you know, you're there just trying to do a job, and I don't think that means that you have to take a bunch of people's abuse, needless abuse. But by the same token, you know, what are we doing to think about, you know, where this revenue is going to come from? Is it, you know, you can only cut so much by way of cost before you're at the bone marrow.
Right.
And yet, revenue generation is, you know, tax. I mean, what's the balance there?
Well, Mayor Emanuel has made it very clear he doesn't want to see a general tax increase to balance this budget. And I think that's an excellent goal, and I'm going to work with the mayor towards that goal. I serve as the vice chairman of the budget committee, and so I'll be working with Chairman Austin and the mayor to get this right. But I think you must first start with examining significant cuts in each department. And it doesn't just mean reducing headcount.
Right.
You have to take a look at each department's mission. Is it outdated? Do we need to be fulfilling these certain roles as a local government? Also, how are we doing business and how are we managing our costs? There are a lot of things that could have been done years ago that have never been implemented because of bureaucratic inertia. Talk about the way we invoice local businesses. Throughout the year, if you own a local business, you're getting a bill from the city of Chicago probably every other month, and you have to send someone downtown to wait in line to pay those bills. Why isn't that automated? Why isn't the city issuing one invoice to a business, telling them all of their obligations for the year, so that that person has some predictability in their costs as a business owner? It gets the city the revenue in the first quarter of the fiscal year. We can then spend the rest of that year chasing after bad debt and scofflaws. It also gives our budget office a better view of revenue projections. These are operational things that don't cost money, but can achieve long-term savings over time. We also have to look at our middle bureaucracy. We talk a lot about frontline workers, and they're certainly going to be a big part of whatever solution we come up with changes to work rules and some more compromise out of our partners in labor. But middle bureaucracy is also, in my view, bloated. Mm-hmm. And there is room to make some size adjustments there too. The private sector, you have one manager to about every 15 employees or so. The city of Chicago, it's one manager to every 8. That's costing us about $90 million a year. The way we provide garbage service on a grid system, that could save us close to $60 million a year.
Yeah.
So these things add up incrementally over time. There are also things we need to do to rebalance our fees to use public space. All of this stuff needs to be on the table. But my point is, we're not going to get it all done in the first year. To pass a responsible budget, you need to have a 5-year view. Getting the city back into the black 5 years from now, I think, is absolutely doable without raising general taxes.
Right.
So we've got a lot of work ahead with our mayor.
Yeah, I know that you obviously know an awful lot about this budget process and everything. I don't know that folks generally know that you've had a history in state government for quite a while, and you saw the state of Illinois' budget. You've been looking at that for a long time.
Yes, and the state of Illinois has got its own challenges.
Right.
But yeah, when I started out working in the state legislature for then Minority Leader Madigan, I was an appropriations analyst.
Right.
So I was a numbers person by nature. It was my job to take about $6 billion of state budget and make sense of it and ask the right questions of the administration. At the time, it was the Edgar administration. And work with their budget people to downsize departments and to find new efficiency. So that's something that I've been doing for a while, and it's, I think, a skill that I'm bringing to the City Council.
Sure. You know, today we're at the Chicago City College's WYCC campus.
It's a beautiful facility.
It's gorgeous, and it's a jewel for our city. Where do you see education of our citizens and our community fitting into the overall process of moving us forward as a city in the 5- and 10-year picture ahead?
It's the key to our future. I mean, education's the whole ball game. I mean, if you look, even if you care more about economic development, say, than you do about public education or school reform, economic development follows a well-educated workforce. And investing in our children at the youngest ages is absolutely critical. We need to make sure that kids are having a meaningful high school education experience and that people are graduating from high school. We want to make sure that the school day is longer so that kids have a chance to really compete with children around the country that have much longer school days.
Did I read that there was some pushback about that from
yes,
whether it's teachers or others? Or?
I understand that leadership in the Chicago Teachers Union didn't want to talk about a 2% raise in exchange for 90 minutes added to the regular school day. And there's a lot of politics wrapped up in that. I'm friendly with a lot of rank and file teachers who are working at CPS every day. They don't care so much about the politics. They generally agree you need to have a longer school day for kids to get a meaningful education. I think what we're seeing right now is a lot of posturing ahead of what will likely be a pretty contentious bargaining period with the teachers union officials. So I hope they work it out, but we absolutely need to invest in our kids because that's what employers look for when they're selecting where to move their headquarters. They want a well-educated workforce and good, solid school systems to provide for their families and their employees at their companies.
Sure. And I think a point that's worth noting is that you mentioned the rank and file teachers. I mean, from my observation, it's all anecdotal, the rank and file teachers are there wanting to teach kids and they're prepared to do it. These are people who spend their own money to buy supplies.
Absolutely.
And so there's a big distinction between that part of the teacher organization and sometimes the political aspect.
I look at them totally
of the
separate.
leadership, right?
Yeah.
Right. And you know, speaking about the teachers and a longer school year, is the data correct that in other cities, as far as you know, they have a longer school year?
Among major metropolitan cities in the U.S., Chicago, I believe, has one of the shortest in the entire country.
Wow.
And that's a shame. We need to make sure that kids are getting instruction, a full days of instruction, and they're not getting that right now. And I think it puts our students at a competitive disadvantage, especially once they get out of high school. By the time they've graduated from high school, students in other cities have gained literally many, many months more of instruction just because our school day is shorter. Right. So that has to change, and the kids deserve better.
I've heard, on a different subject, I've heard you talk about the fact that Chicago needs to show more opportunity and leadership in getting conventions to come here.
Absolutely.
But one of the problems that I'm told we have as a city is that we have a shortage of hotel rooms. Is that, what do you know about that, and how's that going to change over time?
I can tell you, because I'm in charge of a lot of the zoning downtown, there are very ambitious plans to add many more hotel rooms.
Yeah.
So,
anything you can share with us?
Nothing particularly exciting right now, but you can look for a few new developments in the Loop.
Okay.
And you're going to see a once stalled project in the River North neighborhood getting going in the very near future.
I heard about that. That's the place on Wacker Drive.
Well, you've got Wacker Drive, but there's also one on LaSalle Street that's half built. So those will be completed, which is great news.
Right.
But you're right. There is a need for more hotel keys downtown, and my job is to help facilitate getting those built.
Yeah.
So we're going to be adding some more hotel rooms.